The story begins along a quiet and forgotten stretch of the American coastline, one of those isolated places where the world feels paused, where storms rewrite the sand every night, and where life survives only through resilience. In a tiny, weather-worn wooden shack lived a young widow named Elena Hayes. The Atlantic breeze carried salt into her clothes, but she endured it for the sake of her only child, a fragile baby boy who represented the last piece of her shattered world. Every morning, Elena walked along the shore after the fishermen left, bending down to pick up the discarded fish they didn't bother to keep. She wasn't ashamed. Poverty had stripped her of pride long ago, but not dignity. She would hold her baby close, whispering that someday everything would be better. Even though she didn't know how, one fog-heavy morning, something unusual happened. Through the thick white mist, a large vessel slowly emerged. Its dark silhouette cutting through the silence, Elena froze. Ships never stopped here. This wasn't a tourist beach or a trade route. Yet here it was, anchoring only a short distance away. A small crew lowered a boat and made their way toward the shore. At the front stood an older man, broad-shouldered, white-bearded, wearing a long naval coat and holding high-powered binoculars. He looked like someone who had spent a lifetime commanding oceans and storms. Elena's heart pounded. She clutched her child protectively. The old captain studied the surroundings with concern. "We made one hell of a mistake," he grumbled to his men. "This isn't the island we were supposed to land on. Damn fog." As he approached Elena, his expression softened. "Ma'am," he asked gently, "do you live around here?" "Yes," she replied hesitantly. "Just there, in the small house." The captain nodded, but his gaze shifted to the baby in her arms. Something struck him, something emotional, almost painful. He knelt slightly, observing the child's innocent face. "What a beautiful boy," he murmured. "He looks strong, smart. He could grow up to be a remarkable sailor, maybe even a captain." Elena swallowed hard. Compliments rarely came her way. Then the captain asked softly, "Where is his father?" The question shattered her fragile composure. Tears welled instantly. "He died," she whispered, "before my son was even born." The captain inhaled deeply, moved in a way he didn't expect. After a long moment, he said something that stunned her completely. "Ma'am, if this child stays here, poverty will crush his future. But if he comes with me, I promise I will raise him as my own. I will give him a life of honor, education, discipline, and opportunity. In return, I can give you enough money to live comfortably for years." Elena's grip tightened around her son. "No, I can't give him away." The captain's voice grew earnest. "Think about his future, what he could become." Her heart tore in two. Love on one side, hope on the other. Finally, with shaking hands and breaking breath, she placed her baby in the captain's arms. Her world collapsed, but her child's world was about to begin. The moment Elena placed her baby, her entire world, into the arms of the old captain, something inside her broke in a way that would never fully heal. The captain, recognizing the depth of her sacrifice, handed her an envelope thick with cash. "This will keep you safe for years," he said quietly. But no amount of money could touch the emptiness now hollowing her chest. The crew returned to the ship with the child, and Elena stood on the cold sand long after the vessel had vanished into the fog. Only when the waves finally reached her toes did she turn back toward her lonely shack, feeling smaller than she had ever felt in her life. Years passed. The infant, now named Rashid Hayes by the captain, grew up entirely on the vast, unforgiving Atlantic. While other children learned their first steps on warm carpets, Rashid learned his on wooden decks that rocked beneath his feet. He grew strong, agile, and sharp. The sea became his cradle, his school, his playground. The captain, whose name was Captain Roland Mercer, treated Rashid not as an adopted child, but as the son he never had. Roland was strict but fair, stern but warm-hearted. He taught Rashid everything: how to tie nautical knots, read star maps, navigate storms, command a crew, trade cargo, and negotiate at busy ports. Rashid absorbed knowledge like a sponge, always hungry to learn more. By the time Rashid turned 18, he wasn't just a sailor. He was the strongest, bravest young man on the ship. Crew members often whispered, "The boy's got the ocean in his blood." Yet something inside Rashid remained unsettled. Some nights he stood alone at the edge of the deck, staring at the endless darkness of the water. A strange ache lived in him, a memory that didn't exist but still tugged at his heart. He once asked Roland, "Dad, did I ever have a mother?" Roland hesitated, then answered softly, "You did. She was kind, gentle, and far better than the life she was given." Rashid didn't push further, but Roland's expression afterward, heavy, guilty, told its own story. For many years, he had meant to return to the place where he first met Elena, to show her the man her son had become. Yet storms, business demands, and fate kept delaying him. And the longer he waited, the heavier the regret in his chest grew. One day, their ship returned from a successful trade voyage. The owner of the fleet, a wealthy 80-year-old merchant named Jonathan Sterling, invited Roland to his mansion. Jonathan had spent his entire life building a shipping empire. His wealth was legendary, but he had no children, no heir, no one to inherit the empire he created. So he said something unexpected. "Roland, I am old. I have no family. I want to name a worthy man as my successor, and in my eyes, that man is you." Roland froze. No one had ever offered him something so monumental, but instead of accepting, he quickly shook his head. "Sir, I do have a son." Jonathan blinked. "A son? Why did you never tell me?" "You never asked," Roland replied with a faint smile. Jonathan demanded to meet the boy immediately. When Rashid walked in, tall, confident, with storm-colored eyes, the old merchant stared at him in astonishment. "My God, the ocean raised you," he whispered. Then he smiled. "Young man, would you like to become my heir?" Rashid paused only a moment before answering, "Yes, sir, I would be honored." And with that, Rashid's destiny shifted again, toward a world far larger than the ocean he had always known. Jonathan Sterling kept his word. From the very day Rashid entered his mansion, the young man's life transformed. Gone were the narrow wooden bunks and salt-stained floors of the ship. Now he lived among marble hallways, towering windows, antique maps framed on the walls, and libraries filled with nautical journals from every century. But despite the luxury, Rashid remained humble. His heart was still anchored to the ocean. Jonathan appointed him the overseer of the company's supply warehouses, an enormous responsibility. Yet within weeks, Rashid proved himself far more capable than expected. He reorganized storage systems, negotiated smarter contracts, eliminated waste, and treated every worker with respect. Word spread quickly through the docks. Sterling's new kid is a genius. Business skyrocketed so quickly that Jonathan once laughed and said, "Boy, you're going to make me rich all over again." But success brought pressure. Ships returned late with empty holds. Demand soared. There weren't enough goods to supply the merchants. Seeing the risk of major financial loss, Rashid made a bold decision. "Sir," he said to Jonathan, "let me sail out personally. I know the trade routes. I know the waters. I'll bring back the cargo before we lose our market." Jonathan disliked the idea immediately. "No, son, I've already lost too much in life. I can't risk losing you too." But Rashid insisted. His confidence, courage, and loyalty reminded Jonathan of the young sailor he used to be. So with a heavy sigh, the old man finally agreed. Within a week, Rashid set sail, commanding not one ship, but an entire fleet. The ocean welcomed him like an old friend. The crash of waves, the whip of wind, the shifting skies, all felt familiar, natural. But on the third night of the voyage, the sky darkened unnaturally. Early winds grew violent. The sea roared like a monster waking from slumber. A massive storm slammed into the fleet with merciless force. Waves rose so high they swallowed the horizon. Thunder tore through the sky like cannon fire. Crew members panicked, ropes snapped, masts cracked. Rashid wasn't afraid. He had survived storms his whole life. But this time, the responsibility was immense. It wasn't just his life. It was an entire fleet under his command. He shouted orders, one after another. "Secure the sails! Cut that line before it pulls the mast under. Steer against the swell. Don't let the bow dip. Signal the other ships." But the storm was too strong. One by one, the vessels were swallowed by darkness, tossed out of formation. Rashid tried to keep them close, but nature tore them apart like paper toys. Lightning flashed so bright, it turned night into day for half a second, just long enough for Rashid to see nothing but endless walls of water. By dawn, the storm had dragged at Rashid's ship to a different part of the ocean, far from the trading route and far from his fleet. His crew was exhausted, bruised, and shaken, but alive then, through the mist, a dark outline appeared. "Land!" someone shouted. A small, unfamiliar island emerged, a place no one recognized from any map. Rashid felt uneasy. Islands far from trade routes were often dangerous, lawless, or inhabited by hostile tribes. Still, they needed information, any information. With two sailors by his side, Rashid climbed into a small boat and headed toward the shore. But the moment they stepped onto the island, a horrifying scene unfolded. Several men were beating the corpse of an old man, kicking his face, pulling his beard, shouting curses. Rashid's heart twisted in anger. He stepped forward. "Hey, stop! Why disrespect the dead? Are you out of your minds?" One of the men glared. "Who are you to interfere? This man owed us money. He died without paying. This is how we settle our anger." Rashid couldn't tolerate such cruelty. He threw $50 at their feet. "Here, take your money. Now leave him alone." The men backed off. Rashid, with his sailors, dug a grave and buried the man with dignity. But as he wiped the dirt from his hands, he realized something chilling. This island was not just foreign. It was dangerous, very dangerous. Rashid had barely finished covering the old man's grave when a strange noise echoed through the humid island air, shouting, drums, and a crackling sound, like wood burning. He and his two sailors exchanged uneasy looks. Slowly, they followed the noise through a narrow dirt path that cut between thick tropical trees. As they approached a clearing, the scene before them made their hearts freeze. A crowd had gathered around a massive bonfire. Their faces were painted with tribal patterns, their clothes rough and primitive, their expressions wild with excitement. In the center of the clearing, tied tightly with ropes, lay a young woman, no older than 18 or 19. Her face was streaked with tears, her hands trembling violently, her eyes fixed on the flames that waited to swallow her. Rashid pushed forward. "What the hell is going on here?" he shouted. An older tribesman stepped forward, glaring. "Outsider, stay in your place. This woman betrayed our king. She promised to marry him, but changed her mind. For this dishonor, he ordered her and her entire family to be burned." He pointed toward the fire. "Her parents died yesterday. Today, it is her turn." Before Rashid could speak again, another man, calmer, kinder, stepped in. "You should leave, stranger. We warn you, don't interfere." But Rashid wasn't the kind of man who turned away from injustice. He reached into his coat, grabbed a pouch stuffed with gold coins, the emergency stash given by Jonathan Sterling, and stepped forward. "Take this," he said firmly, placing the heavy pouch in the Kinderman's palm. "It's enough to feed your families for years. Let her go. Tell your king she was burned. Just let her live." The two men exchanged uncertain looks, then agreed one. They nodded, cut the ropes, and disappeared into the trees with the gold. The girl collapsed into Rashid's arms, shaking uncontrollably. "Thank you," she whispered, barely able to breathe. I would have died today if you hadn't come." Rashid steadied her. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Selena." Her accent was unusual, refined, educated, not at all like the islanders. Rashid sensed immediately she didn't belong here. "Where did you come from, he asked. Selena looked down. "I was kidnapped years ago, but this island hides many secrets." She glanced at the piles of coal stacked near the village. "Do you have cargo?" Rashid nodded. "Coal?" Her eyes widened. "Then you don't know. Coal is worth more than gold here. These people worship it, they eat it, they kill for it." Rashid frowned. "You're joking." "I'm not," she said strongly. "If you sell your coal here, you'll become richer than you've ever imagined. But be careful. If you trust them too long, they'll take everything from you." Rashid listened intently as she continued. "Go to the main merchant in the city. Tell him you have a full ship of coal. Demand gold, but the moment the gold is on your ship, leave. Don't negotiate. Don't wait. Don't look back. If you delay even a second, these people will attack your ship and claim everything you have." Rashid studied her face. She wasn't lying. Her fear was too real, too raw. "All right," he said. "I'll do exactly as you say." She nodded. "Then I'll wait for you, because after today, I have no one left." Rashid didn't know who Selena truly was. He didn't know she carried a secret bigger than the ocean itself. But he was about to find out, and nothing in his life would ever be the same again. Rashid wasted no time. Guided by Selena's warning, he returned to the shoreline where his ship waited like a loyal steel guardian. The crew immediately sensed something urgent in his expression. He didn't bother explaining everything. There wasn't time. Instead, he gave clear, sharp commands. "Unload the coal onto the shore. Stack it neatly. Then prepare the ship. The moment I shout for anchor, no hesitation, we leave." The sailors obeyed without question. Rashid wiped the sweat from his brow, glanced back toward the jungle, and then headed into the island's main settlement. It wasn't a city in the typical sense. It was more like a chaotic cluster of huts, stalls, and smoky fires. Yet in the center stood a large wooden structure, the trade hall. Inside, men were shouting, arguing, bargaining. But the moment Rashid announced loudly, "I have a full ship of coal," the entire room fell silent. Eyes widened. Whispered gasps spread like wildfire. A tall, broad-shouldered man with a gold-decorated vest stepped forward. He was clearly the chief merchant, his authority in the room unmistakable. "You," he said, voice trembling with excitement. "A full ship? Of coal?" "Yes," Rashid replied calmly. The merchant clapped his hands rapidly, his expression almost animalistic with greed. "Name your price. Whatever you want, gold, jewels, whatever you desire, it is yours. Just sell it to me, now." Rashid didn't smile. He didn't show eagerness. He remembered Selena's warning. "I want gold," he said firmly. "Gold equal to the coal." The merchant hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Done. I'll send it by dawn." Rashid turned to leave. When he returned to the shore, Selena was sitting on a rock, her knees pulled to her chest. She looked up immediately when she saw him. "Well?" she asked, though her voice revealed she already feared the outcome. "He agreed," Rashid said. "Gold at dawn." Selena exhaled, relieved but still anxious. "Good. Now listen carefully. Tonight, you must not sleep. You must stay alert. When the gold arrives, you raise the anchor immediately. Don't talk. Don't negotiate. Don't wait. These people are greedy, dangerously greedy. Once they realize what coal is worth to you, they'll come for your ship." Rashid nodded. "I trust you." She looked away. "I hope you do. My life depends on it as much as yours." Night passed slowly. Rashid remained on deck, lantern in hand, every muscle alert. The jungle behind him rustled with strange sounds, shouts, drums, footsteps. He feared they would come early. But as the first light of dawn kissed the horizon, carts began arriving, loaded with gold bricks, coins, and ornaments. It was more wealth than Rashid had ever seen at once. The sailors exchanged stunned glances, but Rashid's expression remained sharp, focused. When the last cart emptied its load into the ship's hold, Rashid gave the signal, "Anchor up." The crew moved instantly. The ship began to pull away from the shore, just as a terrifying roar echoed behind them. Rashid grabbed his binoculars. What he saw made his blood run cold. Hundreds of islanders were charging down the beach, armed with sticks, spears, and torches. The merchant himself was screaming orders. His greed transformed into fury as he realized Rashid had outsmarted him. But it was too late. Rashid's ship was already sailing into deeper water. Selena stood beside him, breath trembling. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." Rashid didn't know it yet, but Selena's journey was just beginning, and her past, dark, painful, and royal, was about to collide with his future in ways he could never imagine. The voyage back to Sterling's main port was supposed to be routine, but as the ship drifted across calmer waters, Rashid noticed something unsettling about Selena. She was quiet, too quiet. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of someone hiding a story too heavy for words. She spent hours alone at the bow of the ship, staring at the horizon as if searching for a home she wasn't sure still existed. One evening, Rashid approached her gently. "You're safe now. You don't have to be afraid." Selina didn't turn. "I'm not afraid of them anymore," she said softly. "I'm afraid of what happens next." Rashid waited patiently, sensing she finally wanted to talk. After a long pause, she whispered, "I wasn't born on that island. I don't belong to those people. I was taken, stolen, 5 years ago." Her voice cracked, and Rashid remained still, letting her speak at her own pace. "My real home is thousands of miles from here. A powerful place. A place where I had everything: freedom, education, family, love. My parents aren't dead. At least I pray they aren't." She hesitated, tears tightening her throat. "I am the daughter of the king and queen of Hispania." Rashid felt the air leave his lungs. You're a princess?" "Yes," she whispered, "but I haven't seen my home since I was 14. Pirates attacked our ship during a diplomatic voyage. They killed the guards, stole my parents' belongings, and took me. I woke up on that cursed island, held hostage by the tribal chief. When I refused to marry him after turning 18, he ordered my family to be burned." Rashid felt his fists clench. "I'm sorry you went through that." She turned to him for the first time, eyes reflecting a lifetime of trauma and strength. "You did more than save my life. You gave me another chance to go home." A few days later, after careful sailing, they reached the port city. The second Rashid stepped off the ship with Selina. Chaos erupted. Jonathan Sterling and Captain Roland Mercer had nearly given up hope after Rashid vanished during the storm. They rushed forward, overwhelmed by relief. But when they noticed Selina, Jonathan frowned. "Who is this young woman?" Rashid explained everything: how he found her, how he rescued her, how she guided him in making the coal deal. Jonathan listened with raised brows, his disappointment turning into admiration. But Selina wasn't at ease. She kept glancing toward the horizon like she was waiting for permission to breathe. Finally, she spoke. "I need to get to Hispania. I need to find my parents." Jonathan stepped closer, examining her coat, her ring, the 2 books she carried. His eyes widened. "These are royal symbols." Selina nodded. "Belonging to my family." Jonathan stared at Rashid, stunned. "Do you understand what this means? If she truly is who she claims to be, then returning her home is a national matter." Rashid didn't hesitate. "I'll take her there myself." Selina's eyes softened, for the first time since leaving the island. But as they prepared for the journey, someone else took notice. A group of political ministers from Hispania, stationed in America, heard rumors of a foreign sailor transporting a mysterious girl claiming royal blood. They didn't want the princess found. Her return would shift power, threaten influence, and expose corruption. Quietly, they discussed how to eliminate Rashid before he reached Hispania, and their plan had already begun. Preparations for the voyage to Hispania began immediately. Rashid oversaw every detail himself: inventory, crew assignments, food supplies, navigation charts. Jonathan Sterling funded the entire mission, insisting that a royal matter required absolute precision. Captain Roland Mercer, though older and slower now, refused to stay behind. "If my boy sails into danger," he said, "his father will be on the deck beside him." But danger was already lurking in the shadows. Unbeknownst to Rashid, 3 ministers from Hispania, stationed in America as diplomats, had been tracking Selina's movements. They had spent years benefiting from the princess's disappearance. Without her, the line of succession remained weak, and they found ways to influence the kingdom Through manipulation, bribery, and fear, if Selena returned, all their power would crumble. So they sought out a man who could help them. Captain Alvarez, a respected sailor with a dark reputation, skilled, strategic, and dangerously ambitious. He agreed to accompany Rashid's ship, but for a large sum of gold, he secretly promised the ministers something else. I will make sure that neither the princess nor the boy ever reaches Hispania. On the morning of departure, Selena stood at the harbor, her hands trembling as she traced her fingers along the railing of the ship. Do you really think my parents are alive? She whispered. Rashid looked at her with steady confidence. Your mother's tears told me everything. She never gave up on you. And your father, he's a king. Men like him don't bow to fate. A small smile tugged at Selena's lips. Then let's bring them back their daughter. As the ship drifted away from the port, Selena watched the coastline shrink until it disappeared completely. For the first time in 5 years, she felt hope. But the journey was long. 2 weeks at sea required endurance and trust. Rashid spent hours helping Selena reacquaint herself with maps and languages she hadn't practiced in years. She told him stories of her childhood, her love for music, her fascination with naval strategy, her dream of exploring other nations one day. At night, she sometimes woke up gasping, her mind filled with memories of fire, ropes, and screams from the island. Each time, Rashid would sit beside her until she calmed down. He never asked questions. He just stayed. Their bond deepened, not through romance, but through shared survival. Yet something felt off. Captain Alvarez watched Rashid with an expression that hovered between respect and hidden malice. The crew occasionally caught him whispering with 2 unfamiliar sailors. Twice, Rashid discovered navigation charts moved slightly from where he left them. Once, a rope meant to secure a lifeboat was mysteriously cut halfway through. Rashid's instincts flared. Something's wrong, he confided in Roland. Roland's jaw tightened. I've felt it too. Keep your eyes open. 3 nights later, their worst fears materialized. Under a full moon, when most sailors were asleep, and only the soft hum of the ocean whispered around them, Captain Alvarez approached Rashid near the deck rail. You're a brave boy, Alvarez said quietly, but bravery is useless when you stand in the way of powerful men. Before Rashid could respond, Alvarez lunged. Rashid dodged the strike and grabbed the man's wrist, the clatter of steel echoing as a knife fell to the deck. The 2 locked eyes, one filled with treachery, the other with fire. Who bought you? Rashid demanded. Alvarez grinned, a cold, soulless smile. Men who have ruled in your princess's absence. Men who do not intend to lose their throne. Suddenly, heavy footsteps thundered behind them. 2 accomplices charged forward. In that moment, Rashid realized this wasn't a fight for survival. This was a fight for a kingdom. The attack came fast, too fast for any ordinary sailor to react. But Rashid wasn't ordinary. The ocean had raised him, storms had shaped him, and survival had become instinct. As the 2 accomplices charged forward, Rashid pushed Alvarez aside and spun just in time to tackle the first attacker to the deck. The man's knife scraped across the wooden planks inches from Rashid's arm. The second accomplice swung a rope weight, a brutal weapon used to break bones. But Rashid rolled away, the heavy knot slamming into the railing with a loud crack. Captain Roland, awakened by the commotion, rushed onto the deck. "Rashid!" Roland shouted. Rashid's fist connected with the first attacker's jaw, sending him sprawling. But he had no time to breathe. Alvarez was already up again, grabbing a rusted harpoon from the wall. "You don't understand, boy," Alvarez hissed. "The princess cannot return. The ministers want the throne. If Selena sets foot in Hispania, their entire empire collapses, and they'll kill anyone who helps her." Rashid blocked the harpoon strike with a wooden crate lid, splinters flying everywhere. "Then they should have picked someone better than you," Rashid growled. Roland grabbed one of the accomplices from behind, wrestling him to the ground with surprising strength for a man his age. "You picked the wrong ship to betray," he shouted. But the fight was far from over. The third attacker, who'd been hiding in the shadows, emerged with a pistol, an old-fashioned single-shot model, but deadly at close range. He aimed directly at Selena, who had stepped onto the deck after hearing the chaos. "Don't move!" he barked. Selena froze, fear washing over her face. Rashid's heart nearly stopped. "Put the gun down," Rashid said, voice steady but burning with fury. "This is between us. The princess dies," the gunman said, "and the kingdom remains ours." He pulled the hammer back. But before he could fire, Selena grabbed a lantern from the wall and hurled it at him. Flames burst across the deck as the lantern shattered. The gunman flinched in panic, and in that split second, Roland tackled him to the floor, knocking the pistol into the ocean. Alvarez saw his chance and grabbed Selena by the arm, pressing a dagger to her throat. "You should have stayed dead, princess," he snarled. Rashid stepped forward, slow and controlled, every muscle ready to strike. "Let her go." Alvarez laughed. "You're brave, but you're not fast enough." He dragged Selena backward toward the side of the ship. Her eyes widened as her heel hit the railing. One wrong move, and she'd fall into the dark, endless ocean. But Rashid wasn't bluffing. He lunged, not at Alvarez, but at the dagger hand. His grip locked around Alvarez's wrist like iron. Alvarez howled, releasing Selena. She stumbled away as Rashid twisted the dagger from the captain's hand and tossed it into the sea. The fight ended there. The crew, awakened by the noise, swarmed the deck. Alvarez and his accomplices were disarmed, tied up, and locked in the ship's brig. Selena was shaking, breath coming in broken gasps. Rashid reached her first. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head and clung to him, her voice trembling. They would have killed me, killed all of us." Rashid gently steadied her. "Not while I'm here." Roland approached, rubbing a bruise on his arm, but smiling proudly. "You saved a kingdom tonight, son." But Rashid wasn't smiling. He looked toward the dark horizon, the wind shifting, the waves restless. This attack meant one thing. Reaching Hispania would not be easy. Those ministers would stop at nothing. More danger was coming. Much more. The night after the attack was the longest of the entire voyage. The ship sailed quietly under a moonlit sky, but every creak of wood, every shift of the waves felt heavier than before. Fear lingered in the air, not fear of the ocean, but fear of betrayal. If Captain Alvarez had been bought so easily, who else might be waiting ahead? Rashid didn't sleep. He stood at the helm with Roland, scanning the horizon for shadows that didn't belong down below. Selena sat in her small cabin, knees pulled close, trying to calm her trembling breaths. Freedom was close, so painfully close. But danger was closing in from all sides. By morning, Rashid gathered the entire crew on deck. We're not just delivering cargo, he told them. We're returning a stolen daughter to her kingdom. There are people who don't want that, so I need all of you alert. No one works alone. No one wanders. If you see anything unusual, anything, you report it immediately. The sailors nodded, loyalty burning in their eyes. Rashid wasn't just their commander. He had become their protector. Later that day, Selina joined him near the bow. She looked stronger, steadier. Thank you, she said. For what? For fighting for me, for believing me, for not letting them decide my fate. Rashid shook his head. I didn't save you. You saved yourself. I just happened to be there. Selina smiled, a real smile for the first time in years. Then let's save each other. 3 days later, land appeared on the horizon, an enormous stretch of coastline glittering under the sun. White towers, ancient stone buildings, grand harbor gates, all unmistakably Hispania. Selina gasped, covering her mouth, tears already forming. I am home, she whispered. After 5 years, I'm home. But Rashid didn't celebrate yet. His instincts screamed caution. Roland, he said quietly, something's wrong. Roland squinted at the harbor. There were guards, too many of them. Ships positioned unnaturally, flags raised in strange formations. A welcoming party, but not the kind driven by love. It's the ministers, Roland murmured. They've reached home before us. Rashid clenched his jaw. They want to control the narrative. As the ship entered the royal port, Selina stood tall despite her fear. She wore the royal coat she had kept all these years, the ring on her finger shining brightly, and the 2 books tucked tightly in her arms, the very items that proved her identity. When the ship docked, a group of armored guards stepped forward. Their expressions were stern, rehearsed, almost hostile. The head guard called out, "State your name and purpose." But before Rashid could speak, Selina stepped ahead. I am Princess Selina Isabel of House Maravilla, she declared, her voice steady and strong despite her trembling hands. Daughter of King Alfonso and Queen Isabella, I demand safe passage to my parents. The entire dock fell into stunned silence. The head guard hesitated, not because he didn't believe her, but because the truth terrified him. If the princess had indeed returned, the minister's power would crumble instantly. After a moment, he bowed deeply. Your Highness, forgive us. We were told you were lost forever. Selina swallowed hard. Take me to my parents, she said, voice breaking. But just as the guards prepared to escort her, a loud, angry voice erupted from behind. That girl is an imposter! Everyone turned as a minister in embroidered robes stormed forward, his face twisted with fury. 2 other ministers followed, glaring at Selina like she was a threat to their very existence. You are not the princess, he shouted. You are a fraud brought here by this foreign sailor for gold. Rashid stepped in front of Selina, eyes blazing. Watch your words. The minister sneered. Arrest them both. They are enemies of the crown. Guards hesitated, torn between orders and truth. Selina's hand tightened around Rashid's sleeve. Don't let them take me, she whispered. Rashid looked at her with calm determination. They won't. He turned back toward the ministers and prepared to challenge the men who had stolen her kingdom. Chaos rippled across the royal harbor guards, shifted anxiously, torn between their sworn duty and the ministers' furious commands. The 3 corrupt ministers stepped forward, their robes shimmering under the sun, their faces red with rage. They weren't just afraid of Selina. They were terrified of losing everything they had stolen. "Seize them!" the lead minister barked again. "The girl is lying!" But Selina stepped forward, chin raised, her voice ringing through the harbor. "I am the rightful daughter of King Alfonso and Queen Isabella of Hispania, and I can prove it." Before any guard could react, she held up the ring she'd kept for years, a royal signet with the ancient crest of House Maravilla gasps echoed across the dock. The head guard dropped to one knee. "It is the princess," he whispered. The ministers stiffened, panic flickering in their eyes, and one snapped at the guards. "Don't be fools! That ring can be forged!" Selina didn't falter. She reached into her coat and pulled out the 2 books she had carried since childhood, engraved with gold leaf inscriptions, handwritten notes from the king himself, and the queen's personal dedication on the inside cover. "These books were given to me on my 14th birthday," she said. "They were on our ship the night pirates attacked us. These inscriptions are known only to my parents." A murmur spread through the crowd. Even the guards exchanged uneasy glances. The ministers felt power slipping through their fingers. Desperate, the lead minister shouted, "The king and queen have no daughter. They never did." His voice cracked. Too aggressive, too defensive. Rashid stepped forward, his gaze dangerous. "If what you say is true," he said calmly, "why are you sweating?" The harbor erupted in whispers. The tension broke when a royal trumpeter appeared at the top of the harbor steps, sounding a sharp, urgent call. Behind him, walking swiftly with a mix of hope and fear in their eyes, were King Alfonso and Queen Isabella themselves. Selina froze, her breath stilled. The queen's eyes locked onto her, slowly widening, filling with disbelief, then trembling with recognition. It can't be," the queen whispered. Selina took a single step forward. "Mother?" The queen let out a sound between a gasp and a sob. She barreled down the stairs, robes trailing behind her, and before anyone could blink, she wrapped Selina in a desperate, shaking embrace. "My daughter, my baby, you're alive!" The king reached them next, placing trembling hands on Selina's shoulders. Tears streaked down his weathered cheeks. "We searched for you for 5 years. I never stopped believing." The entire harbor bowed in reverence. The ministers' faces drained of color. The king turned toward them, expression hardening. "You lied to us," he said, voice cold as steel. "You told us our daughter was dead." The ministers stuttered, trying to defend themselves, but the king raised a hand. "Guards," he commanded, "arrest them." The guards moved instantly. The ministers didn't resist. They knew it was over. Meanwhile, Selina clung to her parents, overwhelmed, trembling. Rashid took a respectful step back, letting the family reunite. But the queen turned to him with reddened eyes. "You," she said softly, "you brought her home." Rashid bowed. "It was an honor, Your Majesty." The queen took his hand. "No, it was destiny." The king stepped forward. "Young man, you risked your life for our daughter. You protected her when the world turned against her. We owe you more than we can repay." Selina looked at Rashid. "I never would have made it home without him." The king smiled. "Then it is only right that he stays here as part of our family." Rashid's eyes widened. "Your Majesty, I don't deserve—" "You deserve far more than you believe," the king interrupted. And so began a new chapter. Rashid stayed in Hispania, honored and welcomed. Captain Roland and Jonathan Sterling were celebrated as heroes. Rashid's real mother was brought from America to live comfortably in the palace, finally reunited with her son. After decades of tears, Months later, in a grand ceremony under the glittering chandeliers of the royal hall, the kingdom gathered to witness a moment that felt written by fate itself. Rashid Hayes and Princess Selina Isabel stood side by side, not because of duty, but because of the unbreakable bond forged through danger, trust, and courage. And as the cheers of Hispania rose around them, Rashid finally understood. The ocean had not stolen his life. It had carried him to his destiny.